Hi everybody. This is my first YouTube video. Hopefully there's going to be a few more. And I want to talk today a little bit about nationalism. I want to think about what nationalism is, and also, given what it is, it doesn't have any promise for the left, for a project of liberation, of a kind of anti-capitalist socialist project, okay? Because nationalism is often thought of as broadly a kind of reactionary project, okay? It's a project that divides the workers against themselves, against each other across national boundaries, by getting them to believe that they should be loyal to their nation rather than to their fellow workers across borders. Okay, so we often kind of had this idea that nationalism is bad for the left, something that the left should reject, and I want to explore that. I think that might be true. It's pretty plausible. Okay, but I want to explore whether that really is the case or not, or whether I'm going to argue today that there's a kind of challenge that nationalism poses for the left. And maybe it's not necessarily such a reactionary thing, or it has the potential to not be totally reactionary. So, okay, I'm going to start by saying very briefly what I think that nationalism is, and just to say, you know, I'm not I'm not a scholar of nationalism. Okay, so this is not meant to be embedded in any particular, grounded in any particular detailed study of the literature. I think this is a helpful way of thinking about it. Anyway, okay, so the way I like to think about nationalism sometimes is that it consists of two claims, okay? Two claims. First claim is that there are such things as nations, okay, that nations exist, okay? So each particular nationalism is going to claim that some particular nation exists, okay? So is there a Catalan nation? Is there a Scottish nation? Is there a British nation? Is there an American one, Vietnamese, Italian, Brazilian, okay, all these things. You have to say we exist as a nation. I'll say what that means in a minute. And then the second claim is that nations have some kind of political significance. Most importantly, that they should be the prime bearer of sovereign political power. Okay, that power shouldn't belong to kings, shouldn't belong to empires. Okay, it should belong to the people of a particular territory, and they should rule over themselves. Okay, so this is so the idea of the nation state. Okay, is that we have each nation, and once it can be proved that it can demonstrate that it exists, it is therefore entitled to self-determination. And it can therefore be entitled to having its own state. Okay, making the nation into the kind of locus of political power. Okay, so the first claim is where a lot of the problematic things happen with nationalism, the claim that nations exist. Okay, so one thing important to remember is that in the kind of modern sense that we understand the term, this is kind of a novelty. You know, it's only been a few hundred years, okay, since the idea of nations really existing in this kind of strong sense has been kind of become increasingly popular. And this was often it was an intentional project that was required to forge national bonds, okay, often through kind of state power, most obviously by imposing a single language upon, for example, the countries of Europe, which used to, you know, have enormous linguistic diversity internally, okay. It's kind of a well-known thing about Italy is that when Italy was founded, most people who lived on the peninsula didn't speak what we now think of as being Italian, okay, well, more or less, you know. So this is the issue with nations. We claim they exist, but it's always kind of a fantasy. It's always kind of a lie, or completely a lie. Okay, you assert some history. These people, we share some kind of essence or whatever. We've always been in this territory. Never true. Okay, we're all the same. Also not true. Okay, and then also that we have some kind of distinctive features. Okay, so this is where the kind of core of the matter is you've got to say what makes us special. Okay, what makes us our nation? We have to exist. Who are we? And what makes the Germans German? What makes the Italians Italian? what makes the British British, if anything. And this, of course, is where it doesn't have to be a kind of exclusionary, bigoted, hierarchical, chauvinistic idea, okay, that we're a special nation, that we exist, that we have some kind of distinctive things about us, okay. It could be a kind of neutral thing. It's like, you know, a nice celebration of our own distinctive practices and cultural ways and all these kind of things. But of course, very easily and very often, these narratives about why some particular nation is special become intertwined with stories about how they're better than other nations and how we're the best nation, how we're the most important, okay? This is how you get things like, oh, it's our destiny because we're the most important to take over the world, so we're going to try and do that by invading everybody. You know, various examples you can think of here throughout the last 200 years of history, European and American history. The history of nationalism, then, you know, it has obviously very, very dark stories, very, very dark consequences of stories around national superiority and national destiny, where the destiny of one nation like Germany is thought to kind of outweigh and be more important than the destiny of some other nation. So we're just going to, they don't even count as people, so we're just going to do our thing. Okay, so the dark history of nationalism is the history of, you know, First World War, Second World War. At least, you know, they're contributing factors here. Nationalism is a contributing factor in these bloody conflicts. Okay, and we think nowadays of nationalism as this kind of reactionary thing, often associated with this kind of unpleasant chauvinistic attitude, which applies both to people outside of the nation, okay, who are not members, so they don't count, but also, you know, nationalist narratives create division within nations as well, okay, because you end up saying, well, this is what it means to be Scottish, it has X, Y, and Z characteristics, okay, and they include, for example, being white, okay, or being Christian, okay, and therefore, if you're not white or you're not Christian, then you are like some kind of enemy within, all right, because you don't fit in. This is who we are, and you're not like that, so we don't like you. So this is the dark history of nationalism, is about wars and about various kinds of internal exclusion within societies. Okay, but you know, there's also some important kind of positive parts of this story as well. Some more positive versions of nationalism. Okay, and one of them, which is fairly well known, is the use of nationalist arguments, nationalist politics in the anti-colonialist, anti-imperialist struggle. Okay, so the era around the kind of middle of the 20th century, people like Gandhi, then also people throughout the kind of what were the colonial and imperial holdings of the UK and of other places, in order to get their independence. They invoked these national narratives. We are the people of Ghana, and we are, as the Ghanaian people or the Kenyan people, the Nigerian people, we're going to be free. Okay, we're going to be free of the imperial domination. And this, you know, mostly kind of non-European nationalist liberation struggles. These struggles were echoing some of the kind of origins, the kind of early origins of nationalism. Okay, before, well, I mean, I can't tell you the whole history, but before it was kind of really fully appropriated as a kind of establishment state project to kind of build nations. Some of the key origins of nationalism, although by no means the only origins, were also in European liberation struggles of the late 18th and early 19th century. Okay, so one of the key origin points for nationalism, as with all of the modern kind of European-based political ideologies and political movements, is the French Revolution. And so, as often when there's a revolution, everybody else from all the kind of all the old monarchies turns on them. They turned on France. Okay, same thing happened with Russia in 1917. Suddenly they get invaded. Okay, you can't. Turns out you can't kill kings. Other kings don't like it. So France in the 1790s is under severe threat of invasion. You know, the kind of remnants of the French royal family trying to get together with the other European monarchies to destroy the revolution and kill everybody. And so what happened then is that you had a French army, okay, a kind of popular army that was raised up, okay, and armed itself, and then went to war to defend France, to defend the revolution, okay. And this is the kind of first time that there was a national army where they were fighting for themselves. They were fighting for the French people. They were fighting, it was the French people fighting for themselves, okay. They weren't just fighting for the glory of the king, okay, fighting to because they owed loyalty to their feudal lord, and he owed loyalty to somebody else, and this is how it works. You have to go fight when you're told to. Okay, this was an army of popular liberation. Okay, and so this then shows that one of the, at its foundations, nationalism is linked, or has been linked, to a project of kind of proto-left in the French case, but kind of left-wing, democratic, popular, republican, the rule of law, civil rights, and especially popular rule, popular sovereignty. Okay, it's really in modern European history closely intertwined. Okay, with nationalism, the idea of democracy. Why do you have democracy? Because people should be free. Okay, and it's also worth the French case also helps to illustrate something that we already kind of know, which is that nationalism can be really powerful. Okay, it can be really effective if you want to get things done. Okay, on a large scale, nationalism can be a very good way of doing it. We see this in the French case, of course, is that army, that national army, okay, which eventually becomes under the leadership, of course, of Napoleon. It invades half of Europe. Okay, they get all the way to Moscow. They don't make it. Okay, they don't manage to hold it. But they take over half of Europe. Okay, or vast amounts of it. So they're highly successful. And of course, if you look at the history of European nationalisms, they're often triggered by the need to both defend themselves against the French, but also to liberate themselves like the French had done. Okay, so it's a kind of liberal project of liberation from domestic aristocracy, but also, in the immediate context, preventing the French from taking over. Okay, so I'm making this video in Spain right now, and this is kind of one of the origin stories of modern Spanish nationhood, of national identity, is the people of Madrid rising up against the French mercenary army. Okay, when they arrive in, I think it's 1808. Okay, so this is an illustration that nationalism has this roots in democracy and popular rule, or is closely related to things, and also that it can really be effective. Okay, you can when you're the first nation to be really building up your having this kind of national army, you can be extremely effective. All right, so what challenge does this pose to the left? Okay, so we said that nationalism is, broadly speaking, very much a kind of problematic project, because it divides us against people who are foreign, and also it creates standards of membership in our communities which people are often perhaps not going to meet. Okay, which then causes internal division and internal exclusion within our societies. And on the other hand, it has this historically highly significant relationship to popular liberation, popular sovereignty, popular rule, democracy, freedom from imperial control, freedom from certain kinds of authoritarian and unrepresentative and unaccountable government. So the problem for the left is how to square its commitment to internationalism, okay, its commitment to the solidarity of all workers across the world, okay, and this is a shared socialist project that we have to be in together. How does it square this and its rejection of chauvinism, its rejection of bigotry, its rejection of arbitrary exclusion of people from the community, of the kind that nationalism seems to foment? How does it square this with the fact that nationalism is so emotionally effective? It's been so kind of motivationally effective throughout many different periods of modern European history, so effective at motivating people to care about each other, to do things for each other, to join in and contribute to common projects, to be willing to make sacrifices for other people. Okay, you can see that the bonds of nationalism have certain parallels with the kinds of bonds of solidarity that the left wants to cultivate. Okay, and also, even though we have all these problems with nationalism, the fact remains that it is, or it certainly has been, the kind of foundation of a value that we care about, which is democracy, that the left does and should care a lot about, which is that we rule ourselves. We're not ruled, that we collectively govern ourselves. Okay, it should be economic democracy as well. It's the socialist project. But broadly speaking, if you're going to govern yourself, you've got to work out who the group of people is that's going to do the governing, and the answer that has been settled upon, okay, or has emerged through a deeply flawed historical process, has been the nation. Okay, now we can and we have to critique all national narratives. They're all false. Okay, we can argue a lot about which nations exactly should have sovereignty, which nations should have states. Okay, again, I'm from Scotland. I live in Spain. Okay, Catalonia and Scotland are obviously highly controversial cases. Where is there a nation? Well, probably there is in the Scottish case, Catalan case, probably also. Should they have states? Who knows? I mean, I have an opinion on these things. But the point I want to leave us with here is that the left maybe should not be so quick to dismiss nationalism, okay, despite its deeply troubled history and despite its close links to, strategies for dividing workers against each other, okay, despite these many problems, its bigoted chauvinism, all these things, the left may need to think about how it's going to mobilize people to care about each other, okay? And nationalism seems to provide a really strong example, okay? And to a certain extent, these ties already exist, okay? People already kind of do care about their fellow nationals in a different way than they care about their about foreigners, okay? There's much more to say about this, of course. But so, I think that when we understand what nationalism is, we need to be able to see both that it has deeply problematic and flawed elements, okay, but also that it has some promise for building a kind of a cohesive, effective, sentimentally bonded, united community that can then do things, okay, together, which is what we need. And that it is potentially one of the key bearers of democratic sovereignty. Okay, all right. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to come back to this topic probably again before too long. Thanks very much.